This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jaden Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 354 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about what happened to Lucien Favre's overperformance of expected goals at the end of his tenure, Mats Hummels' apparent dislike for indoor soccer, Borussia Dortmund opening 2021 with a win against Wolfsburg, and Saturday's Topspiel away to second place Leipzig. For all that and more joins me Adam Dorowski. Hello Adam, how are you doing?
Good, thanks for having me again.
What a nice day! What an enjoyable Wednesday. Nothing is going on, so it's super nice that we can just record the Yellowwallpod, not do anything else. So that's great, and obviously I also am very happy to announce another guest. It's first time. Paul Johnson is here. He is the deputy editor for FearTheWall.com, and he is a data scientist. He told me to mention so people will get his nerdy quips, and he will sound surprisingly British for someone from Houston, Texas. Hello, Paul. How are you doing?
All right. Thanks for having me on. I wanted the data scientists in there so that people are well prepared for a lot of boring nerd chat.
I hope you skipped the boring part today, since we're recording this for a wider audience. So please be as entertaining as you can, Paul, but no pressure.
I'm going to maximum amount of detail into just like the minutest intricacies of models.
Yes. So models is also what we're here talking about, not the ones Donald Trump likes, but statistical models. And you provided a model for a text for FearTheWall.com that Steve Zimmerman wrote. And obviously that was a little bit about the expected goals over underperformance in the Bundesliga and the expected goal differential, and how Dortmund have fared under Favre, and the, I guess, slight dip at the end. So I'll leave it to you to explain maybe a little bit what happened in Borussia Dortmund's overperforming of the expected goals differential and why it dipped, or how it dipped in the end, if you don't know why.
Yeah, so to quickly clarify, it's I produced some plots for the article that are taken from StatsBomb's data that FBref provides. So Adam can talk a little bit about this as well. What we see is that pretty much during Favre's time as BVB manager, he has overperformed XG significantly, and that seemed to come to a close around the start of this season. And it gradually declined up to the point when he was then sacked. I've got theories as to why it happened.
Well, let's see it.
Yes, I just want to be clear that these are theories. But I think that first of all, one of the big problems was obviously Haaland picked up an injury, and the team had become particularly reliant on him by that time. And so when he left injured, the team were just that much less potent. But I also think I think that the loss of Hakimi rather, hurt the team a lot more than was expected. And we obviously knew he was a fantastic offensive player, but I think we kind of underestimated how important he was for everything that Dortmund do. And I think that his absence has, it's certainly shored up the defence, but they've also, that just not having that speed and that width down the right, has kind of limited Sancho a little bit, and that loss of the ball progression and that speed in transition has meant that Sancho has to drop a little bit deeper to try and make things happen. It means that there's less support in the box, and kind of I think there's just a lot of cumulative negative effects across the whole offense without Hakimi.
So, big recruitment error by Favre to go for Meunier, not for a quote-unquote faster player, or do you think that's more down to Hakimi's special skill set because he wasn't just a pacey guy, because when he was at pace, he also did things quite right? I mean, you can have pacey fullbacks, say Nico Schulz, for example. That doesn't mean they immediately work out if you stick him in there.
Yeah, that speed's no good if it just bounces off your shins, is it? I think it's the problem is I'm not entirely sure whether I blame the team for not investing in Hakimi. It was a lot of money. There were defensive issues as well. I think it would have been really difficult to replace him with another player in reality, because I'm not sure how many players offer that much speed with the same sort of technical ability and creativity. He's a tremendous offensive threat, and I think it's perhaps the blame lies in not preparing for that loss sufficiently more than anything.
Yeah, that makes sense, obviously. So you also made a very nice overview of how dominant Erling Haaland has been in terms of his goal contribution this season. I think you pointed out it's like 38%. It's probably gone down a little bit since the 2-0 against Wolfsburg and his injury. But you can see that in the previous season, obviously, Haaland was not at 38%. I think it was more around 15% or so. And obviously, in seasons before, Marco Reus and Alcázar have been around 22%. And Jadon Sancho last season also was at 20%. So that really shows you how dominant Haaland is. And I'm going to ask this question now because I know it's maybe a little bit silly to ask. But nevertheless, I'm going to go ahead and say, do you think that Erling Haaland being so dominant and the goals not being sort of spread out among other players has hurt Lucien Favre and his idea of football? Because for whatever reason, the rest of players do not get as many good openings and basically chances to quote-unquote overperform the XG as they do, because they just don't get as good of looks due to Haaland being in there and sort of taking it all up for himself.
Yeah, it's hard to say whether it is the result of the team having kind of greater offensive struggles and Haaland kind of taking the slack, or whether Haaland is so good offensively that the team became kind of built around him and became too focused on playing through him, and then losing him obviously did a lot of damage. I think that it's a bit of a cop-out, but I think it's probably a bit of both. I think that, obviously, like I said, I think that the loss of Hakimi has hurt the team, and I think one of the big ways that that's happened is that it's caused Jadon Sancho to have to drop back a little bit deeper. And I think that he is still doing a lot really, really well, but he's just not getting into the box as much, and he's not able to offer the same kind of secondary goal threat that he has been offering the last couple of seasons. So I've got the figure up. It's Haaland so far this season, and I mean this is from I think the last game. So this is including the injury period, which makes it even more absurd. It's he's contributed 38.46% of all of Dortmund's goals, which, if you calculated it from the point before the injury, it's probably, I don't know, close to 50%. It's ridiculous, and that's just it's a huge amount of goals to lose when that player then gets injured, and it's hard to see how the team can kind of live with that. And it's so for example, you've also got there's three other players from this season on the chart, and it's Reina, Royce, and Matt Hummels, and they're contributing about 11.5%, whereas in the previous seasons we had multiple players that were contributing about 20 to 15%, and that means that, I mean, if you lose one guy, sure, it hurts, but you've got other guys that are still contributing a lot of goals, whereas Haaland's doing the work of about two players.
Yeah, it's just
two
crazy.
Of our very best players as well.
Yeah, I mean, Dortmund's attack has dried up a little bit without Haaland. I mean, that was to be expected. I consider him right now the second best striker in the world behind Robert Lewandowski. Maybe you can argue about Cristiano Ronaldo and so on, but otherwise, I don't really see someone that plays an out-and-out number 9 being that good, to be honest. So, Adam, if we look at Paul's plot, you see that Dortmund obviously still above Bayern, Leipzig, Gladbach, and other teams overperform their expected goals, or at least the goal difference. Do you think that, say, Paul's analysis is that Dortmund need to sort of transition quicker to get into better scoring opportunities? Do you think that Edin Terzic is a guy that can fix that will address that sort of lack of transition football and pace and whatnot?
That's definitely an interesting question. I was sitting here just like you, waiting for Paul to give us all the answers, because I've been trying to figure out this one as well. And I think that another piece of the puzzle that has been missing, that maybe we're just not paying enough attention to, is the lack of minutes from Torgan Hazard this season. And he's a great chance creator. And I know that the numbers show that this season creating chances hasn't necessarily been Dortmund's issue. It's been converting them. And I think what Paul has said about Sancho needing to pull back, that leaves less people in that attacking penalty area to finish those chances. Now, Jadon Sancho's numbers for like passes in the penalty area, progressive passes, are way off the charts from last season. So he's creating chances, which then means he's not there to finish them. And I think that getting people behind him, creating chances, whether it's Hazard, whether it's Hakimi, I mean, those were two huge sources of chances last season, and they're just not there. As far as what Terzic needs to do, that's the $1 million question. I don't know if I have an answer to that.
Well, I mean, my answer, I say this somewhat jokingly every time I'll say it, but maybe half jokingly. I would like to see Hazard as a right back or more as a right wing back, because he brings a pace, and usually his tenacity means that defensively he is not too shabby. Obviously, his positioning is not always flawless, and I'll admit that it's not a perfect solution, but at least for games where you are more focused on breaking down opponents than defending, I think Hazard is just a very good option, because as you said, he creates chances, he has pace, he has tenacity, and especially going forward, he just has so much upside. So I think, at least from the squad that you have, and considering that Dortmund will not make any additions this winter or whenever really, that he's a good shout. Mathieu Moret hasn't really excelled in the fullback department yet either. Obviously, he could get more of a chance in the future. I don't know that. But what do you think about Hazard maybe as a fullback, Paul?
Yeah, I quite like the idea. It's because he's done it for Belgium a few times, hasn't he? So it's something he's familiar.
But usually
with.
on the left side, rather, right?
Yeah, possibly. I'm not.
Have I caught you out now that you don't watch Belgium?
Yeah.
I don't know if he's done it with 4 at the back either, which is another interesting one.
No, yeah. It would probably require 3 at the back.
I'd be a little bit more worried trying it with 4 at the back. Definitely, I think that it's definitely one of the better options. Certainly, I think that if we've got, I mean, obviously Akanji has massively improved this season, and Hummels has been solid as ever. So, I mean, I'm reasonably comfortable with the defence at the moment. So obviously, I mean, you lose a little bit defensively playing Hazard, but I think you gain so much offensively that it's worth at least trying, I think. I think the other option is, if they want to play 4 at the back, to go with a 4-3-3 and have perhaps Bellingham and Brandt underlapping for the wing-backs when they push forward. Because I think they just need, one of the things that I think Sancho has struggled with is just the teams know what he's going to do, because he's not got a overlapping run coming, and so they know that he's going to try and dribble at them, and he's going to try and beat them, and without having a concern about the other options he's got, it's a lot easier to try and sort of double him up and stop him.
I think that's spot on, and I mean, Meunier does a couple of overlapping runs, to be honest, but was it against Hertha where we've seen it by Emre Can at some point, because he sort of lost it and just did it himself. I think that's something we need to see way more from Meunier, and I think the clear instruction must be that he sort of needs to find some chemistry with Sancho or whoever is playing on his side. I think Sancho, when he plays more on the left with Guerreiro, that sort of works out much better. I think overall, when Dortmund create over the left side, over Guerreiro's side, that's when they become more dangerous. So I think that's a really good analysis on your part, and obviously it's a bit obvious, but I mean, there haven't been too many different changes, to be honest, so it's hard to put your finger somewhere else. I mean, I've always said that a main reason that Dortmund are struggling is probably also just fatigue. I think we see this across the board with European top teams right now. I think also FBref just published a nice statistic on Twitter that shows that the pressures per game are dropping off significantly. So I guess there's a correlation as well. So that all being said, I asked you guys to do a little homework, which means reading the Mats Hummels interview that I translated for the Yellowwall.net. Obviously, as always, thank you to all our patrons for supporting us, which allows me the time to do something like that, because Hummels did give a rather lengthy interview to Sportbild, and I translated it almost in full. I skipped the parts about him talking about the national team and Manuel Neuer and whatnot, because I found that very boring and didn't want to know. But if you want to contribute, and I think for $1 a month you can have access to our written content, which is behind the quote-unquote yellow paywall. He basically was talking about what the new coach has to bring now, and he says he needs to fit to the team, which is an interesting sentence in contrast to how he may view Favre. He said that now we need somebody who instills determination, passion, and grit. We're basically overflowing with footballing talent, but when opponents meet us with physicality, we're troubled by it too often. And he's also praised Terzic by saying that he identified the issues and is trying to get rid of them in training, and he's also helping us to play to our strengths again. And he also talked a little bit about how he saw Lucien Favre's tenure end, and he said that in the end there was apparently the impression that there was a ceiling of what could be achieved with Lucien Favre. I think the front office eventually came to the conclusion that they had to change something in order to breach that ceiling. And he also had a little bit of criticism toward the footballing style of what Dortmund needs to do better. And I found it kind of funny when he said, "No more playing like kids indoor soccer 5-a-side. It's about creating a competitive spirit and making winning the goal above all else." Adam, what did you make of the Hummels interview and the things he said? I just gave a couple of excerpts there so people that haven't read it get a little bit of a feeling how it went.
Yeah, I have had a lot of the same things underlined and starred that you brought up, like a coach that needs to fit to the team, which obviously means that Lucien Favre did not fit to the team, whether it was the team's skills, or I think in this case it was more the team's mentality. I think he talks a lot about that. Like they need the passion, they need somebody to essentially push these kids on to make them not playing like an indoor 5-a-side, which I thought was another interesting comment, because I underlined that originally because I was like, well, on one hand, maybe they should be playing a little bit more like indoor 5-a-side with kids, just like playing with more fun and taking more risks and not being as methodical about the build-up. That seems to be the things that we hear everybody complaining about all the time. They just take forever to get anything going.
It really depends on how you understand what a kid's soccer five-a-side is indoors, because that can look very and vastly different depending on age group, etc., etc. And obviously fitness level, because if you plug me into a five-a-side, I stand around a lot.
Right. And then, well, later in the interview, he said that going easy for 5 days in training and then going full throttle on match days and delivering, it doesn't work that way. So I think it's less like the carefree side of kids five-a-side and more the, not very serious and just kind of goofing around during training is what it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was sort of also more aimed at how they act in training than on the football ground, right?
Yeah. Which says a lot. I mean, it really sounds like Favre had kind of lost the players' focus. I mean, I think that tactically he's got some great ideas, but it just seems like maybe they just stopped listening to him about these things and just were taking advantage of, fun training or something.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead now and ask the data scientist about the same interview, but I think it stood out, Paul, that he said if Hummels could add one feature to this team, it would be determination, and if they sort of pull that thing off, they would become a top team or a side that can actually compete for titles. What did you make of what Hummels said to Sportbild? I think it was published on Tuesday.
I think first of all, we often criticize players for kind of giving stock answers in interviews and being boring and not really showing their full hand. But I don't think you can say that about Hummels here. This felt really, really honest, and possibly more honest than he should have been. I think that you can read the subtext pretty easily that he was kind of done with Favre. And it's interesting because it kind of plays on a lot of the kind of ongoing criticism that people have had about Dortmund for a long time, and it's become cliched to talk about this sort of mentality issue, but it does seem like Hummels agrees, and I think that there's some truth to what he's saying, and obviously we can't see what's going on in training, but certainly on the pitch it does feel like there's a little bit too much. It feels like they're too easily rattled, and you kind of see it when, I mean, this has been less the case since Haaland and Emre Can came in, but previously during Favre's reign, we saw a lot of going up 1-0 and then just going to pieces at the thought of trying to hold on to a lead. And I think that kind of points to the same issue, really.
Yeah, what I found very interesting, I'm going to say this because it hasn't really been mentioned a lot so far, is that it's also, to me, somewhat of a criticism aimed at Sebastian Kehl. I don't know if Hummels intended it or not, but that's how I read it, because Sebastian Kehl has been obviously tasked to be the guy to, instill a little bit of this grit and determination, the winning culture or whatever you want to call it. And, that this, if one of your, I almost said captains, but he's a former Dortmund captain. He wore the armband late in the game against Wolfsburg. If someone like this talks in that way, I think you have to pin it a little bit on Sebastian Kehl, that we haven't really seen or heard much, or players don't really go out of their way to praise Sebastian Kehl. You never really hear from him, from any other source in the club, unless obviously Sebastian Kehl talks to the media himself. And obviously he is right now being maybe the favorite even to be the successor of Michael Zorc as a sporting director, which is obviously something we need to discuss at more length, because that's going to be a huge decision come the end of 2022. So, right now I view Sebastian Kehl with a bit more criticism, and, this sort of interview by Hummels, I don't think makes him, come away with in the better light. So that's all I'm gonna say. I think it was an interesting interview. It was also funny that they asked him about the potential return about Thomas Tuchel. He just said something, well, if you look at the statistics, I'm sure he's a good coach, but everything else I'll leave to other people to decide. I'm not sure Mats Hummels is too keen on the Thomas Tuchel return.
There's a lot in the interview that he doesn't say outright, but it really does not require a lot of interpretation.
Yes.
Like it couldn't have been clearer that he was just like, oh no, I hate him. So, next question.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very entertaining. But also, no, we still have Wolfsburg and Leipzig to discuss. So, with any further ado, let's dive into the game against Wolfsburg.
Mats Hummels with 3 goals so far this campaign. Haaland with 10. So he's not been involved in any so far. That one's good. That one's excellent. But it's Akanji who's broken the deadlock. Manuel Akanji, the most touches of the ball on the park today. And that one probably his most important one. Dortmund taking the lead 65 minutes into the game. It's been a long time coming and it's been a set piece. Their 4th goal from a corner this season, and there's smiles all round. Corner is high. Brooks couldn't get underneath it. Oh, again, just doesn't fall for them. Doesn't fall for Wolfsburg. João Victor got a couple of good crosses in there. Chan forward. Now's the chance. Sancho on his own. He's got past his man. Jadon Sancho to score. No mistakes this time. Jadon Sancho breaks that duck for the season. And it was done with skill, precision and timing. There's no better time to go 2-0 up than in time added on at the end of a half. That's the game for Dortmund. That's the first goal of the season for Sancho. And he took it very well indeed.
Yes, Borussia Dortmund are back in 4th place after 14 match days. They took 4th place away again from 4th at Wolfsburg with this 2-0 win, which in my opinion was a very nice game. And I'll have you know, since Matthias Zug isn't here, I called him yesterday on his birthday to congratulate him, and I heard basically Darth Vader, so that's why he's not here today. He is sick, but he wanted to rant about how people on Twitter were not happy with this performance, but I think overall I can agree with Matthias that it was a good performance, and obviously Akanji scoring in the 66th minute set Dortmund up to the all-deciding counterattack in the 91st minute, executed by Jadon Sancho excellently for his first goal of the season, as we just heard. Adam, we're not going to ignore it, but besides the, let's say, 8-minute onslaught of hungry Wolves pressing Dortmund to shreds, I think this was a very good performance against a pretty good team.
Yeah, I think when it's all said and done, it definitely is. There are some numbers that stood out about this match that it was a weird one. Like this was the most shots they allowed in a match this season, 21 shots, whereas Stuttgart was the previous high. But that shows like Stuttgart, there were 4.1 post-shot expected goals, and this time there was just 0.4. So the few chances that Wolfsburg was actually getting on the goal were incredibly low value, most of them from very far out. But it was the performance they needed. It was definitely a tough opponent. They played them really hard, but they pulled it off.
Yeah, that's a very concise summary of the game. Paul, I'm just going to openly ask you on your thoughts, your top line reactions.
Yeah, I think I agree that it was a better performance than people are giving them credit for. I think sometimes when you follow a team that you're so used to seeing win all the time, it's very easy to kind of forget that there are other decent teams out there. And Wolfsburg are one of those teams. They're a good team, and it was never going to be an easy game. And I think that on balance, Dortmund were the better team. I mean, like Adam said, Wolfsburg had a ton of shots. So, I mean, the XG for the game was Dortmund had 1.8 and Wolfsburg had 1.6. But when you look at the sheer number of shots, it shows that they weren't a huge threat, and that XG is probably a little bit inflated. And I think that the reality was that Dortmund were much better than the 0.2 difference that would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, I think the very first shot that Wolfsburg had was Xaver Schlager, and then another one a couple of minutes later. I think this one he probably should have scored in like the 5th minute. But Wolfsburg arguably could have won this game. They had enough chances to do so, and if they go ahead, I don't know how Dortmund will react. We discussed it before the game that clinicalness was not a Wolfsburg strength, and I think Dortmund did profit from that, especially in the early minutes. But I really like, and Paul, you already talked about it a little bit. I really like, and this game sort of really highlighted it, how good Manuel Akanji is these days. I mean, he had this outrageous pass to Haaland, which he obviously then didn't score the goal of because I think it was just a last-ditch block by Jonathan Brooks. Overall, I'm really impressed with how good Akanji is, especially in tandem with Mats Hummels, because if we remember the previous months and years since Hummels arrived, that was sort of a big problem that those two just could not understand each other really on the pitch. So, Paul, what are you making of Akanji right now and his form?
I think that outside of probably Guerrero and I mean maybe Haaland, but obviously he's been out injured for a decent chunk of the season. I think that Akanji has been probably Dortmund's best player. He obviously came under a lot of stick when kind of there was a period of poor form in the last couple of seasons, but pretty much since the return from lockdown, I think he's been much improved, and I think he's the perfect foil for Hummels as well, because I mean Hummels is playing walking football at this point, so you need another centre back that is pretty pacey, and I mean Akanji's not rapid, but he's certainly not slow either, and that really helps things.
No, definitely. I think there have been more than enough moments where Akanji killed off chances when Hummels was long overrun, either because Hummels is very proactive and tries to intercept passes, and when it doesn't work out, Dortmund are very exposed at the back. And I think Akanji especially has done a very great job overall this entire season, even when his form wasn't stellar. I think this was one of the aspects he still did well, this sort of cleanup job for Hummels and the rest of the defense, just due to the pace, because he is probably one of the few Dortmund defenders that can actually keep up with the fast-paced attacking players. But I mean, if Dortmund are outnumbered in that regard, see for example Stuttgart, then even with Akanji, it's getting problematic. So whenever Dortmund play against a high-pace offense, it's really going to be causing problems. Wolfsburg are not that team. Stuttgart most definitely are, and I think the results did show that. Adam, there's another thing I want to talk about, and I want your thoughts, but before I want to hear your thoughts, I want to hear my own, and that is, I think that Edin Terzic corrected the Favre error by picking Steffen Tigges and promoting him, and before that, getting Mokoko on the field for his first game for the full debut against Bremen. I think Tigges now having played 10 minutes in the Bundesliga and I think it was 90 minutes in the Cup, I'm already ready to have this complete take, is that I think it would have been cleverer by Favre to probably promote Tigges right away when Haaland picked up the injury, instead of trying to utilize Hazard, Brandt and Royce as a number 9. I don't think that really worked out, and predictably didn't, because in the past he's already attempted that and it never really worked too well. I think the only one that kind of did well in that role was Mario Götze, and otherwise it's kind of sort of meh. And while Steffen Tigges, Dortmund reserve player, 22 years old, is obviously not the best technician, let's say. I think his especially his back to goal movement, controlling the ball, his hold up play, and all of that is just so much more valuable than what the other three players have to offer. And he does know how to press and how to tackle balls and how to make things a bit more tough for opposing defenders, given obviously he just had a 10-minute run out. But usually, and I think Paul mentioned it already, often that Dortmund almost crumble when they are sitting on a 1-0 lead and trying to just sort of bring it home. And in the final 10 minutes against Wolfsburg, he certainly helped Dortmund to alleviate that pressure. There were a couple just punts from Dortmund that he sort of converted into actual possession, and I think that really helped to not have Wolfsburg to have a real power play situation or any pressure. So I personally am very happy with this sort of promotion, because that means Dortmund now have a little bit more depth at the striker position than they had, let's say, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and completely changes the picture. And I think Stefan Tigges, as far as I know, is also sticking around a little bit longer. He has been training with the team now. I mean, the Dortmund reserve team could also use him because they're battling for promotion against Rot-Weiß Essen, obviously. But Adam, since I already put out the disclaimer that my take is a bit of a hot take because we've really only seen about 100 minutes of him, but what's your opinion on this very small sample size?
Oh, I'm very, very happy to talk about Tiggs. I want to make sure that I get my words in on Akanji, though. I'll put those in after.
Fine.
So back to Tiggs. All right. So obviously this guy is playing like a player who has been given the shot that he's been dying for, and he's running with it. What I like about Tiggs is, we've clearly spoken many times about how as Moukoko fits into that striker role, there are times when he just isn't the same size as Haaland, and that's led to actually a few issues. They've literally missed at least a couple of goals because of this. What I like about Tiggs is he's shaped like Haaland.
Your pronunciation of his name ticks me off, Adam.
Nice. I like it. All right. So he's shaped like Haaland. He fits in that spot where the players are used to passing to. And it's made me wonder, like, as we have had lots of injuries with wingers like Hazard, and as we're talking about possibly Hazard coming back as a wing back when we do finally get him back, and it leaves us a little bit thin on the wings, and it makes me wonder if Moukoko is maybe a little bit better for that winger, almost like Diaby role that he's playing in Leverkusen there. It would be great to see him helping out there as well as a way to get more minutes and a way to get a little bit more of a well-rounded attacking performance out of him. And I think Tiggs slots in pretty well. I mean, obviously it's a super small sample size. I don't want to get too excited, like I've done with Reina in the past too, and just kind of had to settle down a little bit. But yeah, it's a good start, and I think he's definitely driven and seems to have a lot of those qualities that Hummels has been talking about.
Yeah, obviously I'm standing here, lowering my thumb from the gallery I'm standing on. But Paul, do you at least in some part agree with the notion that it might have been an error by Favre not to promote him earlier?
Yeah, because he was doing really well for the second team, and I think that you can kind of see as soon as he came in that, he obviously hasn't got the ceiling that the other two strikers have, but he's effective. And one of the problems that Dortmund have had this season without Haaland is that they just need someone to kind of occupy that space for opposition defenders and kind of draw defenders so that it opens up space for the other players around them. And someone like Brandt just can't do that. I think that Moukoko, despite being a lot smaller, found his own ways of doing that. His speed and his movement was good at drawing defenders. But I think Tigges he's shown that he can do that, kind of as Adam said, in a kind of similar way to Haaland. I think he looks to me to be a really, really good option as a backup.
Yeah, he brings a lot of energy, definitely. You can see that clearly, and he does know how to press, which obviously, may sound a bit pedestrian, but in all honesty, knowing exactly to pick your timing to actually, force opponents to commit an error or whatever, is not that easy. And I think sometimes separates good strikers from bad strikers. So I guess in terms of structural Dortmund's performance, I think slotting him in makes a lot of sense, even if his individual skill set is not on the highest level. But obviously, it's still very positive. So I'm very much here for the Steffen Tigges fan club. So should there be one? So yeah, I think I don't want to overanalyze the Wolfsburg game. I mean, it was a good game, but we are also already 40 minutes in, and we still have to preview Leipzig. So we shall move on, Adam, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about Leipzig, obviously, because they are in second place and they have 9 wins, 4 draws and 1 loss, and they are unbeaten at home with 6 wins and 1 draws, and they have scored 25 goals, and they are the best defense in the league, having only conceded 9 goals. Still single digits after 40 match days is very impressive. I mean, just for context, Bayern have conceded 21 goals, Leverkusen 14, Dortmund 18, and obviously that's a good record. Personnel-wise, Dortmund will be without Bellingham, Hazard, and Schmelzer, as Moukoko has returned to the training pitch, so there's a chance that he returns, but we are obviously recording this before the news conference. So that obviously leads me to the very logical question, since you still wanted to talk about it, Adam. What do you like about Manuel Akanji? And maybe you can just sort of put it into context to the Leipzig game. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so when thinking about the best strikers in the league, you've got Lewandowski, you've got Haaland. Who's next? I think this season it's probably Wout Weghorst, and he was non-existent in that match thanks to Akanji. I think that things like that just don't get enough recognition. Yes, he scored the goal, but that's not what he bossed about that game. He made one of the top strikers in the league completely silent. The one shot on goal that Weghorst actually got was a very free header where he was right in between Hummels and Guerrero. So Akanji was not even involved there. But so how does that translate to Leipzig? Good question, because obviously they lost their big striker. I wondered how the heck they were going to get goals when they lost not only Timo Werner, but also Patrick Schick. And it turns out that it's kind of like Dortmund last year. They're just coming from everywhere. So they don't have anybody with more than 4 goals. So it's going to be different than like finding that one top striker and shutting him down.
Yeah, Angelino and Paulsen are tied top scorers for Leipzig with 4 goals each. And Leipzig this season have 12 different goal scorers so far, which is similar to Dortmund, to be honest, because Dortmund so far have 11 different scorers. So I actually expected this margin to be a bit wider, especially since players like Julian Brandt haven't scored yet, or Thomas Delaney. And I don't know if Witzel has been on the score sheet, so I expected Dortmund to have way fewer amount of scorers than Leipzig, but it's actually pretty close. So that's a statistic that surprised me. Assist leader for Leipzig is Danny Olmo, by the way, but expected assists per 90 says that Nkunku and Emil Forsberg are leading in these categories. Paul, obviously that is a big game for Dortmund. They will play the Saturday Topspiel. It's the 12:30 kickoff Eastern time here, where I'm watching. I think you have a couple of hours difference. So going to Leipzig for Dortmund is not easy, but arguably one of their best performances last season came there, in between atrocious losses to Mainz and Hoffenheim. So what can Dortmund fans expect this time around with their trip to Leipzig?
I'm feeling a little bit optimistic, actually, which
don't jinx it.
Yeah. I mean, Leipzig have been brilliant so far this season, and a big part of that has obviously been their sort of wild defence. Conceding 9 goals in 14 games is absurd. I think that Dortmund have the quality to limit Leipzig's offensive threat, but I'm not convinced that Leipzig can stop Haaland. And not really because they're not a great defence, just because I'm not convinced anyone can stop Haaland. And I think that could potentially be the difference maker.
Well, that's a very bold statement. But
yeah,
no,
I'm
you're
running with
right.
it.
Although he will have to go up against Upamecano, and I think if there's one defender that can handle Haaland's pace, it's maybe him.
Yeah. I mean, there is no doubt I think this is one of those games that could easily go either way. I wouldn't be shocked if Leipzig won. I think that Dortmund have the quality to win as well. I'm going to remain optimistic, but I'm ready to have that dashed at the weekend.
Yeah, I think people should mentally prepare for a loss. I'm also very intrigued a little bit about the coaching battle on the sidelines, because I think tactical variances will make a difference in this game. And obviously, Edin Terzic is known, I guess, among people who know, because I don't know him that much, but his reputation says that he is very good at preparing for other teams and scouting them and whatnot. I don't really have a big body of work yet to really analyze his in-game coaching, but this is something where my focus will be on a little bit. So this is a game, especially if Dortmund win, I'll probably watch twice or thrice on different variations of speed. Because I really just want to know what kind of decisions he is making. I mean, we were all hoping, I guess, that Dortmund were going to make some sooner substitutions, as Favre really waited a long time, but so far this hasn't really panned out. So I'm really intrigued what Dortmund can do against Leipzig. I mean, it's obviously not a big secret that Leipzig right now are a better team than Dortmund, just cohesively. And I would even say from a tactical standpoint, they are better at creating chances, if that makes sense, even though Dortmund are also a very good team at creating chances. But Leipzig are a bit more lively, and they definitely know how to utilize their fullbacks a bit better. I mean, Dortmund obviously have Rafa Guerreiro, so it's not like Dortmund are far off Leipzig, and it's I think, like Paul said, very possible that Dortmund come away as winners. Adam, are there any key battles you are looking forward to? And don't say goalkeepers, please, for the love of God, don't.
No, it wasn't going to be goalkeepers. I think there's no other key battle except for the Upamecano and Haaland one. That's going to be the one that decides the game. Now, as far as who Leipzig is going to start on top, I don't know. Who do you think it's going to be?
I have no idea. Honestly, I think they're sticking with maybe Paulsen. But the thing about Nagelsmann is I've tried to predict his lineups for a couple of times, and I just completely failed. So they might just stick with what they did in the previous games. They have so many different striker options. I'm just gonna hand this question over to you, Paul, because I think you might have a more educated guess than I do.
I think you're wrong. I think that Nagelsmann is one of those coaches that it's just a fool's errand trying to predict what he's going to do. I think that given the Terzic is known for his good prep, that may not be as valuable in this case, simply because it's difficult to prep for someone that is a little bit unpredictable. I think I also wanted to touch on, I mean, you're talking about the way that Leipzig create chances, and what's interesting to me, at least, is that Leipzig are on a similar level as both Bayern and Dortmund in terms of the volume of shots that they create per 90, but in terms of the value of those shots, they're quite far behind both Dortmund and Bayern. I mean, Bayern are vastly overperforming their XG at the moment, because everything that touches Lewandowski ends up in the back of the net. But Dortmund have obviously been underperforming. And I mean, I think that some of that is specific to Dortmund, and it's not just bad luck or random chance. But I think that also there will be a portion of it that is just simply kind of the natural random variance in sport. And so it's I'm hoping at some point during this season that things will start to turn around and we start to see Dortmund kind of catch up with their XG, and we could really do with it being this game that starts happening.
I mean, we can already point to the Wolfsburg game and say it happened a little bit. I don't even. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, it's certainly interesting because Leipzig have tried out very like a lot of different things. I mean, maybe you'll see a front three composed of Haidara, Paulsen, and Angelino. Maybe Forsberg will lead the line, which they sometimes do. It's also interesting to see who's in midfield, whether it's Campbell, Sabitzer, or Tyler Adams. There's just a lot of quality in there, and obviously it always gets very physical. And I wonder if it's also going to be Halstenberg as a left back or someone else. I think Mukiel will probably play as a right back. So and Gulaschi in goal. So it's going to be a very strong Leipzig side, especially since they also now had a full week to prepare for this game. So I really wonder what they are doing. I personally expect a very intense game, and a very cagey one too. I don't even know if there are going to be too many chances, but if you look at both teams, you still sort of expect the goals to be scored via through balls more than anything else, to be honest. It's more like winning the ball, losing the ball, winning the ball, and then out of that counter pressing situation, someone finds a through ball, and possibly Haaland or whoever is on the end of that. So that leads me to my next question, Adam. Julian Brandt, should he somehow have a role in this game? Because he, in the past, had good games against Leipzig, minus the back passes to Timo Werner.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. I forgot about that one, but it wasn't that was the game that he had that incredible turn on that goal. Mm-hmm. I'd like to see him in there. I think we're going to need somebody progressive in the midfield. So I could see him matching up with
Elizabeth Warren.
What's that?
I said Elizabeth Warren if you want someone progressive.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect. There you go.
Sorry. I don't know. I've consumed too much US politics in the recent days. I apologize.
No, it's all the same.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting because I don't know if I really want to see the Delaney-Witzel double pivot again, and Bellingham is obviously out. So, Paul, the honor now falls to you to pick that lineup for Edin Terzic, obviously, since he is a keen listener.
I'm going to vouch for Big Mo. I want Mo Dahoud in the middle. I mean, I'm not sure what happened at some point this season, but I think he looked really, really good at the beginning of the season, and he might be the kind of sort of industrious but progressive player that Dortmund could really do with in this game. And it would be nice to see him get some more minutes after seemingly disappearing off the face of the earth recently.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's one of the biggest enigmas in this Borussia Dortmund period. What the hell happened to Mahmoud Dahoud? At first, he wasn't really clicking and couldn't catch any stretch of consistent form, and once he did, all of a sudden he was just cut, and no one knows why or has any explanation for it. It's really weird. So yeah, I'm wondering that too, and I think it's a good shot because I think Dortmund do need someone more progressive, as Adam said, in there. So yeah, I'm really intrigued to see what lineup Terzic will pick. Obviously, what I really want to see from Dortmund is similar against Wolfsburg, is that they do not commit too many defensive errors. I think there were a couple of mishaps, especially early on under pressure, where Meunier had the trademark pass into the box to an opponent. Maybe don't do that too many times. Yeah. Also happens to other players, obviously, but yeah, I think Julian Nagelsmann will look at Dortmund's behavior under pressure early on and will say, that was fairly easy to force them to a lot of mistakes. Let's do that too. So Dortmund should be ready for it this time. I don't know if they will be, because if you're getting pressed high, there's not much you can really do about it other than trying to find footballing solutions, really. But the problem often is, especially early in the game, when you haven't found your rhythm and flow, and Dortmund are a team that needs a bit of time to warm up. It's almost predictable that Dortmund might actually go down 1-0 or so very early in this game. And otherwise, obviously, I would like them to play another quote-unquote mature performance, which I think the game against Wolfsburg certainly was. It was a mature performance from both teams, frankly, which made it such a good game of football in my views. I really enjoyed that match. And I'm hoping for it again, because the Bundesliga needs to advertise itself a little bit. And while I'm not the biggest Raba Leipzig fan, I at least, think that the top teams in the Bundesliga should, have games that people want to watch, that is appealing for neutrals. So this is sort of what I'm hoping for, obviously with a better outcome for Dortmund. But I'm hoping for a high quality game here. That's all I'm gonna say. And I'll leave the last words to you, Paul, and then Adam on this game. What your hopes and dreams are, or things you want to warn about, and then I think we can knock it on the head.
So, I mean, in terms of hopes and dreams, I think my hopes have already been dashed because Jude Bellingham's not going to be playing. But I think beyond that, I'd just like to see Sancho kind of building on his good game against Wolfsburg, and I'm just hoping that we see a kind of match fit Haaland, because I think that could be a real difference maker. I could see this game coming down to either one glaring defensive error from Dortmund or a special moment from Haaland, and I think it will end up being a low-scoring affair, and hopefully that will go our way.
All right. Do you want to give a prediction?
I'm going to go 1-0 Dortmund. I'm sticking to it.
Good. Adam?
Nice. So I want to see Haaland break out. I want to see him just totally overtake that Red Bull defense Rasenballsport defense and grab a couple of goals for us. I have the feeling it's going to be a little bit of a shootout and probably going to end, I'm thinking probably a draw, something like a 2-2, 3-3 again. But no, I'll be optimistic. Let's go 3-2 Dortmund.
Yeah, no, it's a good prediction. It's I guess good news for Dortmund that I'm going to butcher his name because Abel Mescharos isn't here to correct me, but Soberschlei or Soberschlei. Yes. He obviously joined them for a completely unrelated club called RB Salzburg. He apparently is good mates with Erling Haaland, and they are apparently a bit sad that they're not going to see each other on the field. But I'm not that sad, honestly. I don't know why. Just not that kind of emotion here. It's I don't know too much else about the personal situation over at Leipzig yet, but I hope maybe Sabitzer pulls his muscle or something like that, But if not, I actually think that Dortmund will not have a great game because of that Leipzig midfield owning the Dortmund midfield, especially when we have Delaney and Witzel in there, and I think they're going to be a little bit overpowered and at some times outnumbered. Hence, I'm picking Leipzig to win this 3-1. So this is me going for the biggest reverse jinx possible. I don't know if I lessen its effect if I announce it, but be it as it is. Thank you guys for coming on. Paul, it's been a pleasure having you on for the first time. Please tell our listeners how to A, read your written content, and B, follow you on Twitter.
So yeah, you can find me and several other people on fearthewall.com, and I'm on Twitter. My handle is Paul_Johnson89.
Very well. Adam?
I am Fußballtwit on Twitter. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, you can find me at Stefan Butzko on Twitter. You can find all of us at Yellowwallpod, and obviously also on Facebook. Our written content, as previously advertised, please see on theyellowwall.net. And if you want to subscribe to the show, please look out for it on YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. If you want to contribute financially, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall. We shall be back next week with hopefully a Dortmund W and Leipzig pinned away from that second spot. Let's see how Leverkusen can recover and what Bayern will do against Gladbach on Friday. But until then, I want to thank everyone again for listening and stay safe. Good.